2, 1, go. 10 minutes time.
Okay, so the first point that I'm going to address is from the video that you made about Aisha's age, and you asserted that the statement from the Hadith where Aisha says, if a girl reaches the age of 9, she is a woman. I found the actual source where you got the Hadith from, and it was from hadithanswers.com, and I can send the source and the screenshot of the whole page. It actually says that the Hadith is weak. So basically, when you cropped the Hadith, you cropped the part out where it said it's weak. But the issue with the Hadith isn't only that it's weak, it's also that it can be understood as non-literally. As Ibn Qudama, who is a Hanbali scholar, he reported from Aisha that she said if a young girl reaches the age of 9, she is a woman. It is reported by Al-Kahadi with the Isnad, so the chain of narration from Ibn Umar, from the Prophet, and it means that as a woman, because she has reached the age when the occurrence of menstruation is possible, and when she experienced sexual tendencies, hence it is permitted to marry her off like the adult woman. Based on this, if a girl is married and then reaches puberty, she does not have the choice as the adult woman has when she is married. So Ibn Qudama doesn't say that this hadith means that Aisha hit puberty at 9. He says that this hadith means that girls in general are capable of reaching puberty at around 9 when she can experience sexual tendencies. We know that Ibn Qudama is not saying, we know Ibn Qudama is saying that this can apply to prepubescent girls, as he also says in the same kitab or the same book that the age of 9 is where girls usually become able to experience pleasure from sex, but it does not mean that pleasure cannot occur at a younger age. Just as puberty usually occurs at the age of 15 does not mean it cannot occur before that. So according to Ibn Qudama, girls usually reach the age of pleasure at around 9, while usually hitting puberty at around 15. So when Ibn Qudama says that girls can menstruate at the age of 9, he's not saying that it usually happens or it is normal. This means that this hadith is no way proof that Aisha in fact hit puberty. Rather, it is proof that Aisha met the regulations for consummation, which has nothing to do with puberty. So Aisha being able to marry and consummate is all the hadith really proves, and consummation is no way proof of puberty, as according to the scholars, the companions of Muhammad had intercourse with prepubescent girls, and the Quran and Sunnah allows it, according to the scholars. But that's all assuming that this hadith is authentic. It's not, and it can't be used to refute Sahih hadith that paint Aisha as prepubescent. The Sahih hadith, according to sorry, I lost my page. Okay, the Sahih hadith, according to the scholars, actually paint Aisha to be prepubescent. The second point I like to address is the brother's use of al-Bahaki, the Safi scholar. He claims that Bahaki asserts that Aisha menstruated at the age of 9, but that is not what the quote he used says. The quote says, the quote is actually saying if a girl reaches the age of 9 and menstruates, she is a woman. Bahaki himself said elsewhere that Aisha was prepubescent, and there is nothing in the Sunnah that shows Aisha hit puberty before the age of 15. That would in fact align with the average age of puberty according to science and the Islamic scholars, usually hitting puberty at around the age of 15. This idea of Aisha not being an adult at the age of 6 and 9 is backed up by statements by Imam Safi.
Wait, one second. You lagged way too much just now. Just repeat that.
Okay, the idea of Aisha not being an adult at the age of 6 and 9 is backed up by statements by Imam Safi, the founding imam of the Sunni jurisprudence school of thought, who says that Aisha was married off and sent to consummation when she was prepubescent and had no command over herself. Also, according to al-Bahaki, a man that this brother used in the video that I'm addressing, said that Aisha was watching a sport around the same time Muhammad consummated the marriage with her. And he says that this event took place before the verse of the hijab was revealed, as well as the language Aisha used in the hadith is proof she was prepubescent at consummation. So basically, one of the scholars this brother's using in the video says that Aisha herself was prepubescent. There's no proof in the hadith that Aisha hit puberty before the age of 15, as well as other scholars deeming the hadith as weak. And I would also like to get into the average age of monarchy during the medieval period and in around Mediterranean countries. I just need to get over to that. Okay. So the age of monarchy is relevant to discuss because this is clearly what we're talking about. We're talking about when a woman or when a girl hit puberty. So most scholarship on this topic shows that the average age of puberty in the medieval time on average for the globe was around 12 to 15 years old. The Paleolithic age, which was hunter-gatherer days, is the only time that you see the age of monarchy being at around 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's the only time that you really see a consistent basis of early monarchy due to the fact that they had more sustenance through meat and gathering their food and eating it and preparing it in a more nutritious way than when people started agriculture and setting up societies. There are countless sources on the 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 perception of warmer climates affecting the age of maturity, but many of the scholars who actually looked into that more recently have concluded that those are more or
You gotta
less.
repeat that again. You gotta repeat that
Sorry,
again, Brae. You keep lagging.
sorry. So, most scholars that look into the topic of early monarchy due to early maturation due to warmer climates have concluded that it's kind of a baseless assertion to say that warm climates alone affect maturity rates. Other factors are more likely to actually increase or slow down maturity rates. Again, leading to the fact that Aisha simply grew up in a warm climate wouldn't necessarily justify any arguments of her reaching monarchy, especially with the fact that many hadith scholars have commented on the fact that she was in fact prepubescent. What else should I address here? Pulling up something so I can. Okay, yeah, and then another hadith that you used in the actual PowerPoint is the hadith of Aisha being fattened up by her mother to grow, I quote, plump, but the best kind of plump. But again, the scholarship around that hadith has been used to assert that prepubescent girls who are bulky or plump or fat actually have a higher likelihood of consummation, and has not been used as proof to show Aisha was pubescent. Again, I'll pull up some quotes from some scholars on that exact hadith. Sarakashi is a Hanafi scholar. He said that hadith in question is proof that a girl can be sent off to her husband for consummation if she is able to bear it. So children are able to consummate due to this hadith. It is not used to prove that they are not children, but they are women. It's used to prove that children can consummate if they are plump or bulky. And more hadith again. Aisha in
1 minute left.
in Sahih Muslim 2437, Aisha said she basically reported herself feeling jealous about other women in the Qurayshi tribe, and many scholars say that this metaphor that she's referring to is kind of proof that she was a prepubescent girl at the time, and this hadith took place at around the same time of her consummation. And again, most scholars saying that she was prepubescent, and there's no proof of any pubescent before the lawful age of 15.
All right, so the debate topic is, did Aisha reach the age of puberty? Before I begin this debate, I want to make clear an Islamic term, which is baligh. Next slide. A girl is considered to be baligh when she menstruates or when she reaches the age of 15, according to the Shafi'i madhab. When I use the term baligh, I'll be referring to maturity in this sense. So was Aisha baligh at the age of 9 is more of an appropriate question, and on this we could have a difference of opinion. Even if Aisha isn't baligh, meaning she hasn't menstruated and is before the age of 15, she could still be pubescent, as menstruation comes at the latter stages of puberty, coming at around 10 at stage 4, as I show on the screen right now, wherein she could have had a growth spurt, breasts developed almost fully, and other physical features that would distinguish her as having a body of a young woman, which would allow her to fit the criteria on handling relations now in the marriage consummation. Uh, sorry, give me 1 second. Yeah, next slide. So I'll be making an inductive case whereby I put Aisha's age and circumstances within its particular context to make the argument she had reached a level of maturity. Aisha's conditions at the time heightened the likelihood of her reaching the age of puberty earlier. The first factor I'll be highlighting is her living near the equator. Studies have shown that people living near the equator tended to reach puberty at a sooner time than people living in more northern or southern parts. Next slide. Two other factors are her stressful environment she would have been put in and her being fed excessively to gain weight. There's a study titled Psychosocial Antecedents of Variation in Girls' Pubertal Timing, wherein Megan Gunner, a professor at the University of Minnesota, comments on it saying, and I quote, "The research is mixed, and it's important to note that shifts in the onset of puberty are slight. While certain kind of stresses seem to cause the early onset of puberty, there are likely other forces at work. Obesity and weight gain in younger girls has also been an important driver of development." Close quote. So what we see is that two things are at play here that significantly affect one's likelihood of attaining puberty early, and that is both stressful environments and weight gain. Next slide. As we know, living in arid 7th century Arabia with constant fear of death from sickness or war, there was a lot of stress-induced environments, both in the family level as well as in greater society. We also see a hadith here to support the idea that Aisha was eating a lot prior to consummation to the Prophet ﷺ. It says explicitly she gained a lot of weight, saying, "My mother was trying to fatten me up when she wanted to send me to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, but nothing worked until I ate cucumbers with dates. Then I grew plump, like the best kind of plump." Next slide. As a bonus point on physical changes we see mentioned in hadiths, we can tell that before consummating with the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha's hair had grown down to her earlobes in Sahih Muslim 1422, indicating she was physically maturing. Now, it is not a good enough case to make on its own. However, it is one of many reasons we can infer at the end that Aisha wasn't prepubescent. Even in Ezekiel 16:7, we see hair growth as a sign of a girl reaching the age required for relations. Next slide. The second form of evidence to make this inductive case that Aisha hit puberty when she consummated with the Prophet ﷺ is all the evidence that people in the Islamic tradition witnessing girls maturing and menstruating at 9. Bayhaqi comments on a tradition in Sunan al-Kubra where Aisha supposedly said when a girl reaches the age of 9, she's a woman. Even though there is doubt on its authenticity, it still shows the attitude of Bayhaqi that he believes it's not an unusual age for a woman to be menstruate at the age of 9. There's another narration in Sunan al-Kubra in Arabic on the left by al-Bayhaqi, volume 1, page 476, where Ahmed al-Shafi stated, "I hasten to say that I have heard from women in the Tihama region attaining maturity at 9 years." So it's clear that the early Muslims all agreed that menstruation at 9 isn't something abnormal, but rather around the minimum age you would start seeing it happen. Next slide. The next point I wish to discuss on this matter is how betrothal and consummations usually worked in the pre-modern age. Usually in the pre-modern age, we would see a girl being promised onto marriage at a prepubescent time and consummation taking place any time she had reached the age of puberty. In Jewish law, we see this with the age of 12 being the minimum age, and in canon law within the Catholic Church up until 1917, having the age of consummation being the age of 12 also. With an example from the Catholic Church being Aquinas, who says betrothal is at 7 and consummation is at 12 in his Summa. Now, the reason why they give the age of 12 is because that was the age when a girl would usually menstruate in their respective societies. It's not to say that a girl wouldn't menstruate and meet the criteria before the age of 12. Next slide. We see in the Talmud that the criteria mattered more than the age. In the Talmud, it states, some say a girl 11 years and 1 day old and a boy of 12 years and 1 day old, as that is the age at which they are considered adults in this regard. This age is only approximate as the age of the majority for both this, the boy, and that the girl is at the onset of puberty in accordance with the verse, your breasts were formed and your hair was grown. So the rabbinic tradition maintained that someone before the age of 11 could be considered ready for consummation based upon Ezekiel. And with that passage, they are willing to open the possibility a girl's hair would have grown and breasts would have formed. Next slide. We see this also in Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologia, where he says, and now for the most part, this age is the 14th year in males and 12th year in women, as I mentioned before in canon law. But Thomas Aquinas says, but since the ordinances of positive law are consequent upon what happens in the majority of cases, if anyone reached the required perfection before the aforesaid age, so that nature and reason are sufficiently developed to supply the lack of age, the marriage is not annulled. Here, obviously, nature would refer to physical maturation, and reason would be the ability to consent. Next slide. Now, Aquinas claims a whole ton of critiques against the Prophet ﷺ. And he claims a bunch of more claims against them. Would it make any sense that he would overlook that the Prophet ﷺ consummated with someone who hadn't reached puberty? Surely that would be one of his first more critiques he would be thinking of mentioning. The lack of mentioning of a critique on the Prophet's marriage with Aisha at her young age by any pre-modern prominent figure in the Catholic Church, by rabbinical Jews, by anyone at all up until the modern age shows us that they didn't see a problem in the way the Prophet ﷺ consummated the marriage with Aisha, and it was in direct accordance with their standards of marriage at the time. So either you take it to mean that the Catholic Church, pre-modern Jews, and everyone else all had no problem with someone consummating with a pre-pubescent child, or you accept that the whole world at that time accepted that Aisha reached puberty prior to consummation and therefore met the standards for consummation at the time. So with all these sources from the Christian and Jewish pre-modern texts, as well as logical inferences based upon their lack of criticism of the Prophet ﷺ's marriage, we see that physical maturation for consummation was something they were open to and accepting at the ages younger than 11 or 12 in their respective time periods. Next slide. The last point I try to fit in is that Aisha didn't know her exact age. Can you tell me the time?
Yeah, 3 minutes left.
You're in doubt about her reaching physical maturation as a 9-year-old, and it sounds too unbelievable to have developed a bunch of physical traits required at the latter stages of puberty. Well, it would be okay to make the case of her being 10 or 11. The reason being is that the way the Arabs in the region back then would track dates wasn't exact, as they followed only a lunar calendar. They were heavily uncivilized prior to the arrival of the Prophet ﷺ, so when Aisha gave her age, she had no exact idea of when the age would be, and thus didn't give an exact definitive age. The basis by which they would track dates would be based on major events. If there was a major event X and major event Y, people would have approximates based upon the relation between these two when they're to talk about certain dates. Because of this, it opens the doors to possibilities that she was older than 9. This wouldn't lead to the rejection of the hadith in Bukhari, because someone who takes the stance that Aisha estimated her age wrong wouldn't reject the authenticity of Bukhari, but rather the individual would be rejecting Aisha's methods of measuring her age. So us as Sunni Muslims, we would have to all accept historically that Aisha said that she was 9, but it isn't dogmatic that we must believe she was correct in her statement. Next slide. So to summarize the points that have been discussed, these are the following reasons on why there's concrete case that Aisha did hit puberty at consummation. The combination of all these signs, including the historical context she lived in, the lack of condemnation by the opponents of Islam, and her being fed in a stressful environment, living near the equator, makes this silly to claim that Aisha didn't hit puberty before consummation. All right, that's all.
Perfect. With a minute left to go. Okay.
Okay. Let me leave this right. Okay, I
5-minute
took some
rebuttals.
notes. Okay, so the first point I want to address is Thomas Aquinas and his Summa Theologica.
Wait, I'm gonna start the 5-minute rebuttal. Give me a sec.
Okay.
Just 1 sec. Yeah, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, Aquinas said that the marriage at the age of 7 or before puberty was actually a minority case, or the minority, it's basically the exception to the rule. He asserts that as the exception, and Aquinas said that about boys and girls who were married off before puberty. So both parties would be prepubescent. It is not about a prepubescent girl being married off to an adult man in the Summa Theologica. And he agreed that the consensus was that marriage should be at puberty. Betrothal should be at puberty, consummation at puberty. Everything should be at or after puberty. That is the consistent narrative in the marriage laws of the Summa Theologica. And then the next point I'd want to address is some of the rabbinic traditions that you brought up. Again, quoting the Talmud isn't a good way to get a good gauge on what the Jews believed. We should look at first their practice through historical documentation, as that would show which opinions from the Talmud were the most highly guarded due to the fact that they're being practiced. The Talmud is a collection of rabbinic commentary, regardless of if it is viewed as correct or not, as we see the Talmud rebuking the Talmud in itself, meaning that it's not asserting every word as legalistic legislation. So one of the factors we should look at is the average age of marriage, of first marriage in Judea at around the time of the Talmud being compiled, which is first, second, third century. So during those time periods, the average age of marriage in Judea for first marriages among women was around 14 to 22. And that is supported by other rabbinic traditions found in the Talmud, specifically Niddah 47a, basically that whole chapter. We see a description of an unripe fig, basically an analogy: an unripe fig, a ripening fig, and a ripe fig. Marriage could happen only when a girl was a ripening fig, and that was said to be at around the age of 12, and or after puberty, after menarche. And then consummation was to take place at the ripe fig stage, which was after puberty, again at the average age of the first marriage in Judea during the compilation of the Talmud. So again, kind of quote mining the Talmud isn't a good way to get a representation on the Jewish practices of the time. And then the next claim I want to address is the fact that Jews and Christians didn't have an issue with it. I believe that argument to be kind of an argument from ignorance. The lack of criticism doesn't prove that they didn't have an issue with it. Again, we would have to have solid proof that they had knowledge of all the intricate details of Islam prior to the digital era and prior to many of the translation of Hadith into the languages that non-believers can speak. As we went over, Jews in their practices would not have allowed Muhammad to marry Aisha. And as we went over, the Summa Theologica again wouldn't have allowed Muhammad to marry Aisha, again showing that Jews and Christians would, if a man such as Muhammad were to attempt the marriage to Aisha in their culture, it would not have been seen as permissible. It would not have been the norm, and it definitely would not have been a standard for someone of that culture. And I think I'll just quickly, how much more time do I have left?
You have 1 minute left.
I'll just quickly go over the source you showed about girls reaching maturity faster in the Mediterranean regions. Many scholars who went in on that topic have concluded it to be a rather weak assertion, and I can send those direct studies into the chat after. But yeah, I'm basically done with the rebuttal there.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so Dean, you ready?
Yeah, just give me like 10 seconds. Okay, you can start the time.
Okay, done.
Yeah, so I've got I'll try to address as many points as I can from your intro and from your rebuttals. So the hadith being weak doesn't affect my point that Aisha could have possibly reached the level where she could be physically mature, because obviously Bayhaqi, as I mentioned before, this is a representation of what he believed when a girl would usually mature. And you mentioned like a bunch of quotes from I believe it's Ibn Qudama. I don't know because you butchered the name. So sexual tendency indicates puberty as well. Um, and puberty here mentioned by Ibn Qudama about them usually reaching it at 15. That's absurd for someone to say that someone would usually reach the age of puberty or menarche at the age of 15. Clearly, what he's talking about here is bulugh. He's talking about maturity in the sense of either reaching the age of menstruation or reaching the age of 15, right? So you gave another quote by Bayhaqi saying that there's no evidence of her reaching maturity before 15. Yeah, again, that's bulugh. So there's no like indication that she reached menstruation. Apparently, Shafi states that she was prepubescent. But again, I'll just say that this is pre-bulugh. This isn't prepubescent, because in the Shafi madhab, as I presented in my PowerPoint, they define maturity as either menstruating or as either being at the age of 15. So a girl reaching the age of menarche at the time, you saying that it's like a bit delayed or it's around like the age of 12, 13, it's not around 9 or 10. It's irrelevant to the point that a girl could reach puberty before menarche. It's not like this whole idea of whether I shape puberty or not. It's not restricted to the age of menarche. It goes actually beyond that. Puberty can be hit and someone can reach physical maturation before menarche. I made the case that Aisha's conditions actually matches the conditions in the Paleolithic era actually, so that actually supports my point. She was fed a lot, stressful conditions, hotter climate, and I gave other indications that she had hair growing and so on at her younger ages. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's an exception. Like even if Aquinas is making this like an exceptional thing, what matters is that it exists. People maturing at 9, 10, and 11, or even at 12. Uh, and yeah, you're wrong for saying that Aquinas says that at 7. Um, yeah, that's wrong because what he says, from what I remember in his Summa, he says that she has to reach a level of mental maturation, but for her actually reaching the age of consummation, she has to be physically mature. And he says it here actually in his reply to objection 3 in his Summa. I can send you the reference later. And since a girl becomes apt for the act of procreation in her 12th year, and a boy at the end of his second 7 years, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to quote the whole thing. He says clearly that they become apt for procreation at 12. So I don't see how he would say that she would reach puberty at 7, or someone could possibly reach puberty at 7. And even people reaching puberty at 7, I mean, you even saying that is conceding a point in the debate, because the whole point is that Aisha didn't reach puberty at 9. If you're saying that puberty is required at 7 for betrothal to even happen, you're making the point for me. So the average age in Judea being around 14 to 22 has nothing to do with the minimum age at all. It's just like the average. It doesn't mean that it being between 14 and 22 doesn't mean people didn't get married at 30 or 40 or 50. In the same way, it doesn't mean people weren't getting married at 9, 10, 11. Um, so yeah,
1 minute left.
So Aisha was an exceptional case. Like I made that clear. The Islamic position is that every 9, 10, 11-year-old should get married. Even Imam Nawawi mentions that it's not recommended for a girl to be betrothed at a young age and consummate at such a young age unless you see benefit from it. There was clear benefit in the case of Aisha with I would have mentioned the debate. It's not really relevant. The discussion is just on whether she had puberty or not. Essentially, you said the absence of evidence doesn't equal the evidence of absence in response to my argument regarding no one condemning the Prophet ﷺ for 1,000+ years. Well, this only applies when you wouldn't expect it to be evidence. We would expect it to be evidence here because this is something that would have been well known by Aquinas, by John of Damascus, by all of these people preceding the modern age. They would have access to Islamic knowledge on the basic level. And if they had knowledge about the Quran and, how Jannah looks, and so on and so forth, they obviously would know about the Prophet's marriages. It's very absurd to
That's time.
claim. Okay. Yeah.
So then now it's the 5-minute cross exam.
Yeah, go ahead. You can start.
Okay, so
One second, just to clarify, there's going to be no conclusions after this cross exam. We're done.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. 5 minutes Bible Brae. I'm gonna do 3, 2, 1 again. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead. Start.
Okay, so my first question is, do you concede that by the Islamic standards set by the schools like the Safi school or even basically the four madhabs, that Aisha was prepubescent by the Islamic standard?
Yeah. So she wasn't prepubescent, so no, but she was considered to be pre-bulugh. So there's a distinction between being baligh and being pubescent, right? So someone
Yeah.
could be someone can be sorry, you just don't interrupt because I'm giving a response. So someone can be pre-baligh but can be pubescent. That's my whole point within my intro. Within the Shafi'i madhab, it says someone can be below the age of 15, below the age of menarche, and yet still be pubescent and consummate the marriage. Now, the scholars will say that Aisha was pre-baligh. Sure, it doesn't mean that she's pre-pubescent.
Okay, what I'm trying to get across here is that by the Islamic standard, they are pre-balu, which is the Arabic word for puberty, and you're describing a different form of maturity that they describe. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at here.
No. So
So
baligh wouldn't be exactly defined as puberty. No, so it would be defined as maturity, and maturity by the standards of either reaching the age of menarche or reaching the age of 15. Now, if Aisha didn't reach those levels, that's fine. She could still be pubescent. That's what's
okay,
indicated. Yeah. So
yeah. So
someone. So,
what?
so
what
you agree that someone can be pubescent prior to menarche, right?
well, but yeah, by my standards, but I'm using the Islamic standards of puberty. This girl was before menarche. She was allowed to be consummated before menarche. That's my
Yeah.
point.
It doesn't mean she's someone pre-menarche doesn't mean she's prepubescent.
In a colloquial use of the word prepubescent, that can be one of the uses of the word prepubescent. Is before menarche. Is if a girl hasn't experienced menarche, they will be referred to as prepubescent by both the Islamic scholars and also even non-Islamic people. That's basically what I'm trying to get at.
Yes. Yeah. So pre-bulugh doesn't mean prepubescent, as I said. I don't think anyone would define someone that hasn't menstruated as being prepubescent. Prepubescent means they haven't reached any stages of puberty yet. They haven't developed at all. You're meaning to tell me that a person would say, looking at a girl with a growth spurt, with breasts developed to an extent, with a pelvis growth between 80 and 85%, so on and so forth, all these physical developments, you're meaning to tell me that this person's prepubescent. So someone's going to say
No,
they're
I'm not. I'm saying
pre-menarche.
again. What you're describing is a very slim minority of girls before menarche. It's very unlikely that a girl reaches voluptuous breasts and hips before menarche, as menarche is one of the things that set off growth in the hips and the birth canal widening is when menarche and you actually start menstruating. The only time women or girls have wider hips before menarche is due to a late period, not a normal occurring period, which your scholars say Aisha probably reached at around 15. So that's what I'm trying to get across here is that Aisha was allowed to consummate at a young age before menarche, not due to a late menarche, but a normal occurring menarche. She was still sent off to consummate before
Yeah,
menarche.
yeah. So I made it clear before. Like Aisha is a clear exceptional case because of her circumstances, because of her mom trying to push for her to physically mature quicker, because of her conditions. Because of that, she's an exceptional case. Now, um, you're actually wrong. So I pulled up the Tanner stages before. So a girl can have a decent amount of breast growth, pelvis growth, around 80 to 85% pelvis growth. Breasts develop to a great extent. and a growth spurt of about 96% of their adulthood height would be reached by the time they reach menarche. So if a girl's reached 90 to 95% of her adulthood height pre-menarche, that's still a lot of growth, man. So I don't know how you could consider that to be prepubescent.
I'm considering it by the Islamic standard, as again you asserted the
No,
Safi school.
I made a distinction prepubescent from pre-bulugh. If you're talking prepubescent, they're not saying prepubescence.
I'm
Is what
not
I'm
saying that they're
saying.
not saying she didn't grow or anything. And again, I also want to address the point about the hadith. The
Wait,
hadith of
wait,
Aisha.
1 second. You're not saying that she hasn't grown. That's the whole debate, man. The whole debate is that
No,
she hasn't reached puberty. That means she hasn't grown.
yeah, prepubescent. And then you're appealing to a non-Islamic standard. I'm appealing to an Islamic standard of puberty to show that you guys think that this is a child. You
20
guys
seconds.
agree with consummating of a child. Yeah, I just want to address the point of the hadith quickly before my time runs out. The hadith of Aisha getting fattened up isn't so she can reach a certain level of maturity. It's so she can withstand the force of intercourse as seen through the fiqh. The scholars define being chubby or bulky, not being mature. It's being chubby or bulky and being able to withstand intercourse. It's not necessarily growth in the sense of puberty, but growth in the sense of being able to withstand a man, which can come without puberty.
Yeah,
That is time.
yeah,
And Dean,
yeah,
you have
yeah.
your
But
time.
he's gonna let me respond to that because that was his cross-exam time.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
go on.
you can respond to that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, like I didn't mention because this is completely deviating from the topic at hand, which is whether I should puberty or not. We're not talking about whether some Islamic scholar holds to some fringe view about a girl being fattened is good enough for her to endure the relations. We have a principle in Islam called don't reciprocate harm and don't cause harm. That's mentioned in the hadith. Now, if this obviously the scholar is wrong because it causes harm, but this is a complete deviation to the point, and that has no relevancy to whether I should hit puberty or not. Because yeah, anyways, yeah, I don't want to take up too much time, so I can start my cross exam now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 5 minutes. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. So do you think that girls, even though the average age in Judea was between 14 and 22 for first marriage, do you think that girls were still getting married between the ages of 9 and 13?
They probably were, but I don't think that is the representative of the norm or the moral standard of the time. Because even today, people do immoral things that are still, again, like, it's a fringe part of society. That's how I'd answer it.
Yeah, so I would say Aisha's case was a fringe case as well. She was between 9 and 13 too. So yeah, I'll just say that's a fringe case. She's an exceptional case, and Nawawi says this is exceptional as well. Shouldn't be done generally. Now, you think that anyone that you said it's immorality, right? So anyone that considers someone to be ready prior to the age of 12 for marriage, is that person considered to be a pedophile sympathizer?
Not necessarily. It would be anyone who considers consummation before monarchy. They would be a pedophile. That's how I would assert it.
Yeah, yeah. So pre the age of 12.
Well, before monarchy, it's again like age doesn't like. I'm more arguing from the actual practical aspect of monarchy.
Okay, but that's very arbitrary. You realize that, right? So a girl can have the same body type as a girl who has reached menarche, and yet you're willing to say just because one bled and one didn't, that someone's considered to be a pedophile for consummating with someone that
No,
hasn't reached
that's not
puberty.
at all. That's not at all what I'm saying. Because again, a girl who has the body of an adult woman who hasn't menstruated, that would be due to late menarche. But what I'm saying is what comes with menarche, the being able to bear children, the higher likelihood of having a safe pregnancy, all these things that come from having intercourse after puberty, which is the standard. So the average thing, the average age where a woman is able to have safe intercourse and safe bear a child safely would be after menarche. But if a
Yes,
woman
yes. So
has
the
the
average,
body of a woman,
yes. So the average age has nothing to do with the minimum age. We're talking about the minimum age here. So, and also you're giving a response, but from like a utilitarian perspective. You're not referencing the Bible. You're not referencing any tradition. You're just giving this causes more likelihood. This more likely causes more harm in
Well,
pregnancy.
I can base this in the Bible. I'm just giving you like my opinion is all rooted in the Bible, but I'm just not quoting scripture along with what I'm saying, just to kind of get the point out.
Yeah, so we can talk about. You said that Aquinas says that someone has to reach puberty at the age of 7.
Yeah,
For that
I
to
was
be
going to correct you
deplorable.
on that, but I forgot. What I said, or I might have misspoke, or you misheard me, but I said that he said that marriage before puberty was an exception at the age of 7. I didn't say that he said that they had to reach puberty at the age of 7. I was saying he was saying that is a minority. Marriage before puberty is a minority, and he says if that is to happen, it should happen at the age of 7. So he's regulating a practice that is common or whatever is happening, and he's saying you shouldn't do it, but if you do, it should happen at 7. I'm
Yeah,
not saying that.
he doesn't say you shouldn't do it. He definitely does not say that. But
Well, he says it's the minority. If
maybe you can show me later. Yeah, it's fine. Like Aisha, marriage is like Aisha's marriage in the Islamic tradition, or the minority as well. We don't claim it's the general thing. So again, like Aisha's an exceptional case. I made that very clear before. What's my time left, Isa?
1 minute.
Okay. Last thing. So the absence of evidence, you said, doesn't equal the evidence of absence in the sense you said that this was an argument from silence when I said that no one criticized the Prophet's marriage um, up until the modern age. Now, do you really think, because obviously this fallacy only applies when wouldn't expect evidence. So, for example, there's no evidence that Abraham existed historically outside of the Bible. There's no archaeological evidence. Well, it doesn't matter. That's an argument from silence, and it applies because you wouldn't expect evidence. Now, if someone makes the argument that Jesus or Muhammad didn't exist, peace be upon them, and they say there's an absence of evidence, therefore this is an evidence of absence, this would apply. This wouldn't be fallacious because you would expect there to be evidence that Jesus existed and that Muhammad existed archaeologically. Now, on this point, do you think that you would expect evidence that you would expect evidence from Aquinas and John of Damascus and all these early church writers and all of these people pre the modern age? Would you expect there to be a condemnation from them on the part of Aisha marrying the Prophet? And you're claiming she's prepubescent. So do you think
Just
that
the
there would
last
be?
question.
Yeah. Do you think that any of these people prior to 1905 or 1915, when I said the first criticism came, do you think that you would expect it to be a condemnation?
No, I do not expect there to be a condemnation. As again, John of Damascus, he got things wrong in his critiques of Islam, showing that he did not have a vast, in-depth range or access to valid Islamic sources. He was critiquing some unauthentic Islamic sources. So again, there is no reason to assert that these people would have the in-depth knowledge of these hadith that have not even been translated. For John of Damascus, they weren't even written down yet. He would just be hearing stories. For Thomas Aquinas, they weren't translated into any language he wrote or spoke. So again, there wouldn't be any reason for these people to have any knowledge outside of what Muslims in their regions kind of told them, or they heard from Muslims in their region, or what they directly read from the Quran. As I'm pretty sure there were early translations of the Quran, but no hadith were translated up until pretty recently. So I do not believe that a lack of condemnation directly to Muhammad of his marriage to Aisha is a good argument to base their beliefs on. As again, from their writings, again, Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica, again, paints a picture of marriage that does not agree with the scholarly painting of Muhammad's marriage to Aisha. Again, Imam Safi agreeing that Aisha had no command over herself. Other scholars, again, asserting that Aisha didn't have a say in the marriage, whether she wanted to or not, she didn't have a say. You quoted Thomas Aquinas basically saying there needs to be mutual consent and it can't happen before puberty. And then also Jews in the Talmud and their practices at the time.
We're above the time. We're above the time. But
Okay.
That was yeah, that's the end. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for witnessing the debate, Dean versus Bible Brae. We hope we can host many more.